rooting for you. And as a matter of fact, we were all rooting for you. And I've never had to yell at a girl like this. Let's get right into it. Today, we are recapping the America's Next Top Model documentary, and you are getting the added flavor of somebody who was in the fashion business in New York City for quite some time. So, we are going to be doing some historical deep dives, some context, and some insider tea, which isn't proprietary information, just things that I observed while I was in the industry that can add a little bit of color to this crazy ass documentary. Because, Tyra, yes, I am looking at you. And anybody that says I shouldn't be looking at you, I put on 4 eyes today to look directly at you. So let's get into it. Now, first thing is the setup of the show is very important to understand how we got here. And when I say the setup of the show, I mean the people behind the show. Starting with Ken Mock, who his show before ANTM, do you know what it was? Making the Band with the group O-Town, who was a kind of pop boy band. That show was a collaboration with Lou Pearlman, who himself has a documentary because he is a fraud and a scammer and stole money from NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and O-Town. Then you had second season of Making the Band with who? Your best friend Diddy. Uh-huh. So this is the kind of programming that you like to make, Ken Mock. This is the type of, drama and iniquity and people who love to do robbery and fraud. This is who you align yourself with. So the choice of going with Ken Mock on Tyra's part was already from the beginning a little deep. When we look at the station that said yes and the people that said yes, Dawn Ostroff, who was the head of UPN. Dawn went on to have a pretty interesting career because after she was at UPN and at America's Next Top Model, that was one of the shows that she worked on along with Everybody Hates Chris at UPN. She went on to work for Condé Nast. If you don't know who Condé Nast is, that is the company that owns Vogue, Glamour, Allure, Teen Vogue, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, GQ, Men's Vogue, Architectural Digest, among many, 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 many other publications. Dawn was over the digital division after Top Model. Then she went to Spotify, which is actually where I met her because after I worked in fashion for many years, I switched to tech. And she was the chief content officer at Spotify when I worked there. She was in charge of podcasts. She was the one that signed major podcasts like Michelle and Barack Obama, Joe Rogan, Kim K, Prince Harry and Meghan, also the Joe Budden era when he was over at Spotify. What's interesting is he said that that leadership was part of the reason that they broke away from Spotify and ended up taking his stuff to Patreon and YouTube and making his own thing happen, right? So I just like to give you the sort of background of who was on the project. And then you have Tyra Banks, scorned model from the 90s and 2000s. And we're going to get into the history of why she was scorned. But as she said herself, this was payback. This was not about elevating the girls. This was not about the girls of color, the girls who had rare and unique beauty, the plus size girls. This wasn't about them. This was payback to the industry. And there's a reason Tyra wanted payback for the industry, but we're going to get into the history of this, little snafu later on. But just so you know, we have two media magnates who care about profit, media, expansion, money. And then you have a scorned model who wants payback. That is the setup of who we have behind the show. And here is why that is important. Tyra is not the only person to have ever done a show like this. It's just the intention and the setup made her show go one way and the other shows of similar ilk go a different way. Let's think about Project Runway, hosted by a model, Heidi Klum. That show was made with a guy named Eli Holman, who previously did Punk'd, Undercover Boss. He also did the movie In Too Deep. What's interesting to me is they chose to have super heavy hitters in fashion as their panel. They had people like Nina Garcia, who I believe was the editor at Elle for many years. They had Michael Kors, who was the designer, Zach Posen, Brandon Maxwell, Law Roach in later seasons. They launched off the careers of major designers, Christian Siriano, Michael Costello, Mondo Guerra, Cara San, Austin Scarlett. They actually have careers in ready-to-wear, red carpet, celebrity, costume design, bridal. They're in the industry, flourishing to this day, along with many other designers from that show. There's actually models who flourished from Project Runway, and the show wasn't even about them. I actually know a girl who modeled for Project Runway, and her career is going on after that. And it's a piece of material she can use in her portfolio all the time. Unlike the girls from ANTM, who, other than Eva and her spider face photo, have nothing to show and nothing they can use because you had them in all this ridiculous clothing, not in real designs with real notable designers. You did not give them a portfolio they could use because of the setup of the show. If you also think about Project Runway, it was the same reality TV setup, same thing as RuPaul's Drag Race, where everyone's in an apartment, they can't talk to each other, they don't have phones, blah, 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 blah. Same thing. Except nobody was getting SA'd over there, and we were not catching salacious moments and waxing and all of that going on because it was a professional organization and they were there to talk about design. So that's what we need to focus on, cameramen, them designing. Why are we at your wax appointment? Choices were made that didn't have to be made. Also, you don't have to stay at one network when they're forcing you into iniquity and shade. Project Runway was actually on two different networks. It was on both Bravo and Lifetime across 17 seasons, meaning you can leave, Tyra. You could have taken your show and packed it up and gone. You said it was the showrunner at the network after several cycles. At that point, when you said they started pressuring you to do things, you could have taken your show to another network because you had that much leverage. You could have, here's a concept, renegotiate. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, it's called renegotiate so that you can keep your intention if it was pure to begin with, which it was not. You could have kept the J's. You could have kept your show and took it to another network. But no, let's just do what UPN says because that's how much you believe in yourself. Okay? Let's not even try to renegotiate and keep the people who are helping me be successful. Let me not protect them and try to take this to another network. Let me just say scrap them and stay right here because it's a meal ticket and I'm winning. So you didn't do with your IP what you could have done. And the folks behind you were going to let you continue to be their puppet as long as you were going to allow it. So I just wanted to say that's the setup for this, right? It's payback, it's scorned, it's let's make money, it's let's make drama. That was the foundation of the show. That's how we got to some of the places that we got to. Now, talking about the foundation of the show brings me into my chapter 2, which is what I consider a bit of LGBTQ exploitation. Now, the Jays are responsible for what comes out of their mouth, and they both issued their regrets and apologies and blah, blah, blah in the documentary. But here's what we're not talking about. You brought them on there for that. And when you see her talk about Miss J is where it started to piss me off because she started to perform a caricature of a gay man. Oh, so fierce. And when it was, oh, and all this snapping. And girl, that's not how you talk. That's not authentic to you. But you brought them on to play a character, and then you get to play a character now on top of it by proximity. You're using them as props. Again, if you look at Project Runway, Michael Kors is a gay man. Tim Gunn is a gay man. Christian Siriano came back as a judge. He's a gay man. None of them were playing up all of this shade and being mean and roasting and whatever. The most Tim Gunn is going to tell you is make it work. I don't know about that design, but do make it work though. But you brought them on to do a specific thing. You brought them on to read. You brought them on for shade. You brought them on for puppetry and minstrel show activity. That's cooning to me, is what that is. So while they are liable for participating in said coonery, you set up the minstrel show because that's what you wanted. And you played into it and did all of that. You also hired people like Janice. See, it's called setting up a foil, where you put people around you who look a certain way so that you look a certain way. This is a strategy. So what she did is, I'm going to have everyone else around me sound really mean so that I can sound like I'm there for the girls. But I'm still being shady, but I'll be the least shady of the panel of shade. So I'm going to sound like I'm fighting back to Janice, except it's not fighting back if one, you aired her mean comments instead of editing them out. And we saw you at the editing bay pointing, looking all in charge. You could have cut those scenes out where she was talking about people's weight and calling them fat. But you chose to air it. And you argued for the model's defense, except again, why would you hire somebody who speaks that way? Why would you keep her on once you realize she's doing that? And why would you keep those scenes in? Because all of that was within your control. So this is the framework for the show. Where could we go from there with good? Where could it be good? Right? So I think, yes, watch your mouth, guys. They didn't have to be mean. But I think also that people that were in minstrel shows back in the day doing blackface, did they want to do that either? Or was it do it or I'm gonna whoop your ass? Do it or you get your check taken. Do it or you're gonna be off TV. Play it up or we're gonna replace you with someone else. I think there's a little bit more blame to distribute than just to the Jays. And here's why I'll also say that. It's not like these were her good Judies that she really, really messed with like that. Because you still haven't gone to see Miss J in the hospital after the stroke. And we see the way you iced out Mr. J and acted like he didn't exist, talking about I am disappointed. That was your friend, right? So you didn't have anything to say in person? You iced him out, didn't speak to him on set, acted like he never exists. Nasty. Took away his responsibilities. Those weren't your friends. They were your gay puppets that you used like purses and a little cockatoo, a little tiny dog, a little bird that you can carry on your shoulder to feel cool. And I don't like when people do that to folks in the community. I really don't. I have dear gay friends that I've known since middle school. I've probably spent more time in gay clubs than I have in straight clubs in my lifetime because I feel very safe there and I love everybody involved. But they are not props. Don't ever do that either. And don't like do, maybe this is just my slang, but don't do people. Like, it's kind of like when people come to New York and try to like mock the New York accent. Don't just observe it, just hear. You don't have to try to act it out. That's insulting because this is these people's real accent and you're doing a lot. You're trying to do them. Like, just please stop that and let people be themselves. So that was the second part of the setup that it already was looking bad. Okay. Now, chapter three, body shaming in the early 2000s. Now, I hear this flying all over the internet. Those of you who are watching ANTM, either in Rewind or this documentary, are appalled by the thinness of the girls, right? What you may not be aware of is in the early 2000s, that was the thing. Your favorite pop star, your favorite movie star, even Beyonce and her friends, everybody was stick thin. Fashion trends recycle every 20 years, and along with them come body trends. If you think about the 60s and mod fashion was very, very thin, twiggy. So in the 90s, and then, right? Do you see where 80s, 90s, then it comes back early 2000s? It's every 20 years. So, yes, that was the times. Yes, everybody was super skinny. No, it was not healthy. However, the body shaming on America's Next Top Model was actually some personal shit of Tyra Banks. And now we're going to get up into your ass and your business. Let me explain to you why this is actually historical and very personal to Tyra, and it's not an accident like people are making it seem. Tyra Banks, even though she is 5'10", when she started modeling, she was a size 4. For context, to be a high fashion model, you have to be a 0 to a 2. So instead of being a 2, she was a 4. You are twice the size of those that can be in high fashion long term. It's why she wasn't necessarily part of that ilk of supermodels in the late 90s and 2000s. Naomi Campbell was the resident black girl. Do you know why? Because Naomi Campbell is a 0 to a 2. She is sample size. And when I say sample size, what I mean is when a designer makes a collection, it's obviously designed to put on models for the show, right? Those pieces are called sample size. Sample size is 0 to 2. Here's why I know that. I used to run a showroom in New York City, which is like a PR agency where they represent several designers and they have a showroom where each of them, their line for the season, they have all the samples in the showroom. Reason for that is stores come in so they can carry the line and see the items in person before they actually order amounts of pieces. And then you get them placed for things like red carpet, magazines, like appearances on shows, whatever. So we were always like lending stuff out to stylists, having different stores come in and look at the inventory and ordering what they want, going to trade shows, you name it. What's interesting is, so our office, half of it is an office, and the other half is literally like racks of clothing, right? And a meeting area. Nobody could fit the clothes because they have to be a size 0 to 2, and nothing that is in the building will ever be bigger than a 2 because they're all samples. The only person who could fit the clothes was a fit model that worked with us, and she was a social media intern because she was like a 0 1 at the time. Funnily, she was also a blogger, so I used to let her take the clothes on the weekend and shoot and bring them back. It was like our little secret. I'm like, girl, if you mess these clothes up, it's me and you, okay? Because I'm gonna get fired. But it was a thing to even work in, to even model. And so the reason you have fit models, for more context, is let's say a Macy's is coming into the showroom because they want to see like which of these lines do we want to carry anything for, because we carried like Free People, for example, like Zahar, some different labels. And so they would come in to see what they want to pick out for the season. And if they want to see a design live that they like, they want to see what it will look like on, the fit model has to kind of parade around in the clothing, but you have to be sample size. Tyra Banks was not sample size. In fact, fun fact, she has actually said in interviews that she got the most body shaming in Milan, Italy. They actually called her plus size in Milan in her career. And you want to know what's interesting about that? That is the exact city you sent them girls on ANTM. Why Milan? Now, of course, Milan is one of the hubs of fashion, but they also have Fashion Week in London and Paris and Tokyo and New York and LA. You didn't take them to any of those fashion weeks. You kept sending people to Milan because you knew that they were going to go through the same body shaming and hazing BS that you went through. Payback. It's half payback, half hazing, because that's a big part of the fashion industry. It's like sororities and like Greek life. I got hazed to get in. You have to get hazed to get in. It is not about me making a better experience for you. You will experience the suffering that I experienced to be part of this club and this organization. It's literally the same thing. You've never heard someone be like, oh, I got into a fraternity or sorority and like, they said it was way easier than when they pledged. You'll never hear that in your life unless there's literally the law intervening. That's the only time that conditions are going to get better. Same with fashion. People, when they get to a high seat, they don't leave. And if you try to get into their spot, you will be tortured and hazed and treated horribly. Okay? Now, yes, some of it is also the industry. And Nigel touched on this because he was a model himself. The fashion industry was incredibly cruel and heralded and rewarded thinness. And here's how I know that to be true. There was actually a lawsuit, I believe, against IMG. And in the 3 years that I was part of their production team, which they actually have a really interesting setup, did you know that outside of each designer's producer, there is actually an army of about 300 people that do the production for New York Fashion Week, unpaid? Except you still have to interview and go through like an extensive process at IMG. I remember I was sitting at a table of like 50 people and I had to bring my portfolio of previous shows. I had to do an interview. I had to literally prove and tell them on the spot why I would be better than everyone else at the table. They would interview each year about 1,500 people and only pick 300. And then on top of that, anybody they brought back. So once you do one season, they invite you back for all the subsequent seasons, which is why I ended up doing it for 3 years. But in those years, that was the era. I was in the Lincoln Tunnel era. So Fashion Week was in Bryant Park in New York City for many years, and then it moved to Lincoln Center. I was in that time frame. I remember the big tubs of just Smart Water and granola bars backstage. 3 seasons of Fashion Week, and I did not see any real food. And when I tell you, I worked on each season, I would grab like 4 or 5 shows of huge designers. Even the production team, we would get there at 5 o'clock in the morning, let's say for a show that's going up at 1, and we would get like 20 minutes to eat a bagel and some juice. And you're not allowed to bring any food into the venue or your phone. You can't call anybody, you can't text anybody, you can't take any photos, and you can't bring any food. We were in there about to fall out, baby. So that lawsuit actually made them change the way they treat models and staff backstage and provide more food and nutrition or whatever, because them girls were falling out too. It is an industry-wide thing. It's very sick. Sample size is taken a little too far. And you'll even hear sometimes designers say things like, oh, you have to be super thin so you can show off the movement of the garment. It's BS. It really is BS, but it's so deep rooted that I was disappointed by the lack of differentiation. If you're going to make a TV show, be different than the industry. Of course, you're preparing them for what will happen, but be different. You could have set up opportunities. Like I said, people got contracts out of Project Runway that were also plus size models, that were also Black models, that were also unique looking models. They got portfolio photos they could actually use, not ridiculous wild photo shoots with wild outfits, not from really notable designers. So you have a hodgepodge of weird bullshit. Like, you did not set these girls up for success, even in an industry that's tough. There would have been a way to do that, right? You didn't have to roast them to prepare them to be roasted in the real world. That's not helpful. What they would have needed was mentorship, preparation, shoring up, resilience to handle it when they get out there, not roast them and then crush them from ever having a career at all. But this was personal for Tyra Banks, and I think she enjoyed it. I think she loved being the one on top that gets to say who's fat and who's not, because she was the one that was called fat for a long time. She was the one that was compared to Naomi for a long time. I think that's part of their beef. They've had beef for 20 years. And I think it's honestly because Naomi grabbed that spot of a high fashion size zero model, and she has not come up off it for 30 years. She also used to say things like, I don't get out of bed for less than like $10,000 or something. She stood on that, and she knew that she had a chokehold in fashion because of her body. And I think it's actually why Naomi got a surrogate, because that's her bread and butter. She cannot gain weight. She's been the thin Black girl for like ever, right? If so, it's just unfortunate that she had an opportunity to do something different and protect the girls. But instead of doing that, you did payback and you did the reverse Uno of what was done to you. Which leads me to my next point, which is a lot of fashion is a mean girl movement, and there's nothing about it that's empowering. And I saw that myself. There is something that they call the Condé way. Remember, I told you Condé is like the company that's over Vogue, Glamour, all those things, right? The head of Vogue for like the last 25 years has been Anna Wintour, who's notoriously scary. She's actually who the movie Devil Wears Prada was based off of. The reason she's that way is that her father, an Englishman, actually owned a newspaper for many years, and he was actually nicknamed Chilly Willy for how cold-blooded and mean he is. So she took the Chilly Willy way to Condé, and everybody that has come out of Condé since has that same attitude. The person who owned the PR agency I worked for used to work for Condé, and when I tell you it was Devil Wears Prada mini edition, I had to put jackets on her dog every day, different color jackets. I had to have a water glass filled on her desk and two sprays of gardenia before she stepped in the building every morning because she said so. And her chair had to be pulled out by me. And I had to take her coat and I had to hang it up and I had to do all the things. One time she had me get on a ladder and paste pieces of paper to the window because the light was coming in an angle that was upsetting to her. And then she yelled at me when I was on the ladder. Mind you, I'm running your showroom with millions of dollars of merchandise and jewelry and clothing and shoes. And you should be focused on me doing that. But instead, you're yelling at me to get on the ladder and get the sun out of your face. I've also had to clean up dog vomit many times. Like I said, I had been running my own fashion business for 5 years, and now I'm cleaning up dog vomit because you say so. And she was one of the meanest people I've ever met in my life. She actually made all of the girls cry in the building. Her staff meetings included just simply bringing us together in a circle to read us for filth in front of each other. There was no such thing as private review. It was hazing, it was a fashion way. Every single one of those girls that worked with me left crying at some point. I actually walked out and quit. Fashion is the only industry in my entire 40 years of living in which I've ever walked off the job. She was so mean to me one time in the middle of a staff meeting. I literally did the Viola Davis and picked up my purse and was like, get the fuck out of my face. I will absolutely not stay here. And this is my last day. I don't even think I told her it was my last day. I just told her, fuck off. I'm not dealing with this. And I left. Like, fashion is the only place in which women have been so mean, and especially PR. Oh my God. Whew. Models. Whew. The fashion is cutthroat. I literally have done, outside of Mercedes-Benz, I've done PR and production for a bunch of other different fashion shows around. And I was sent to get a change of clothes, even though I was backstage production because the two mean girls that owned the PR agency didn't like my outfit, even though I was only going to be backstage. And they told me to go down the street and buy a different outfit if I wanted to do the show that night. You know what I did? Walked out. I was going to buy one. And then I thought, fuck them. Actually, I'm not. So I'm going home and I'm not going to say anything either. Because if I did all this work for weeks to lead up to this show, and you just decided you don't like my outfit, and I now have to spend money so that I can actually see the fruition of all the work I've done, you can kiss my ass and you can put the show up yourself. And you're not a producer, so best of luck. I don't even know how that show turned out. Couldn't care less. I had been doing so much work for weeks, I had to physically deliver because this was back in 2011 when you had to hand deliver Fashion Week invitations. They had me do it in the rain all over Manhattan, including the Condé Nast building. A whole box of invites. I called them and I was like, guys, it's thunderstorming. It just busted out raining. What am I supposed to do? They're like, we don't care. If you come back here with one freaking invite in your hands, it's your ass. We don't care. Get it done. In a thunderstorm, on foot, and the train. 200 and something invites. These people are ruthless. And here's the thing, they know you want to get in. So they will torture you. I was doing PR and production, but yet you have me picking up your heels from getting tipped. You have me getting Starbucks for you. You have me picking up yogurt for your dog. Like the amount of things I've been made to do that had nothing to do with my job. I did a fashion show one time that the seat cards came in wrong the day of the show from the printer. So I had to bring my physical printer and all the cartridges I had left and reams of a paper from Harlem on the train to Jazz at Lincoln Center to print them out that same day, only for them to fire me halfway through Fashion Week for absolutely no reason. Like, this is the industry. They know they can fuck with young people who want to get on. They know they don't have to pay you. They know they can steal your ideas. They know this stuff. It is a field day. So no, I'm not going to let Tyra off the hook. I'm not letting any of them off the hook because this is the industry. Nasty. And oftentimes women of color that get a seat, oh, wow. Worse. The lady that owned my PR agency was Asian. She couldn't wait to shit on the girls. My God. It was actually unbelievable to see in like moving color in real life. It was wild. Very disappointing. And that leads me to really where my heart broke was seeing the essay, seeing girls put in uncomfortable situations on photo shoots and being told to deal with it. Everyone's here, we're paying a lot of money. You know why that bothered me to my core? Because as we would say here in the Northeast, it's deeper than rap with that stuff in fashion. What I mean by that is some of them folks are in the files, baby. Some of them folks are in the freaking files. They said Naomi's up in there. I'm not gonna do her. We talking about Tyra right now. But here's what I know. Want me to tell you what I know? In the 5 years I was producing for my own company, I had people come to me because, granted, I was always finding models. I was always looking for girls. I found girls off the street. I found amateur girls. I would train them. Like I had, within 5 years, I had a bank of at least 100 girls that I have worked with. So people would approach me for my girls, rappers, businessmen. I was asked to bring girls to clubs, to parties, to VIP sections. Hey, I'm having a business dinner with my investors. They have spent millions of dollars in my business. They're all like high powered men. They're coming to town. I need you to bring me some girls. Within 5 years, I went from a producer to people hitting me up like I was a pimp. Did I give my girls up? Absolutely not. I would never do that. And I would tell people if she shows up on her own volition, I had nothing to do with that. And nor do I condone that, nor should you ever connect my name to it. And I'm going to tell her not to come, as a matter of fact, because I know what's going to go on. When I got to New York City, I went to LIM College, which is the Laboratory Institute of Merchandising. They actually have an undergraduate fashion program, and they are the only grad program in the country that has both an MBA and a fashion program fused into one. And I was super excited about it. Still grateful for the experience, but I also learned some things there that were really shocking. Namely, one story. I worked with a girl who was fresh off the shores of China for the program. Program was 18 months. And she was a merchandising master's major. So I was MBA with a specialty in fashion, and she was merchandising master's. And I remember thinking, like, she would always come in like fur coats and so fly and all this jewelry and stuff. And I remember like making friends with her because people didn't understand her accent. I think people are just lazy and don't want to listen. She was very cool. And so I would talk to her in the back of class and be like, girl, what's your story? Like, why are you here? You don't seem like you have to actually be here. And she was like me. I waited like 6 years after college to go back to grad school because I was doing the business and whatever. And she was my age. And I'm like, so what's your story? She's like, oh, actually, I don't have to be here, but I'm being paid to. And I said, what? She's like, I have a really successful online jewelry store, but my investors, this is so crazy to me. She said, my investors are paying for me to come here to go to school. They're also paying for me to get into trade shows and fashion weeks so that I can link them up with the models. And I stared at her for 2 minutes because I was like, you're not saying what I think you're saying. You're not. You're not telling me that you're here because international businessmen want you to help bring them You wouldn't be saying that, are you? And she was like, yep, that's what I'm saying. Very plainly to you, looking in your eyes and saying it. There's people being flown to New York City to traffic these girls, being set up in industry and business. And oh, I work in fashion, I'm in PR. A lot of these people are handlers for other people who have more money. But you'll just see a young, beautiful girl like, oh, I'm in PR, I have a jewelry brand, I have a whatever. Nah, that's not what that is. What it is proximity to women that will be trafficked and or purchased. Very scary. Right here in New York City. Like to this day, I haven't forgotten, and I graduated 10 years ago or something. Like it has stayed with me because I was like, if she's not the only one here, this is a thing. Because if she's talking to me so openly, then she's assuming that because I'm in America that I knew that was going on. That's how she said it to me, like, girl, yeah, like, for the girls and how they, and as she's breaking it down, I'm like, and because she knew I had been doing fashion shows, I think she thought I was doing the same thing. And I was like, no, 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 no. We were doing fashion on the runway, girl. I didn't have anything to do with that. So there is a very scary connection between that show and what it represents and what we got to see. Because here's the thing. Even if we talk about the Shandy situation, there was a young lady named Shandy who hadn't really drank before the show. They invited male models to their villa. She proceeded to get very drunk that night, which, while she was an adult and it was hers to do, they also filmed her sleeping with one of the models while she's almost blackout drunk. So she can't really consent when she's blackout drunk, right? Horrible. They filmed it. They filmed her calling her boyfriend and admitting it. They filmed everything. And while the cameramen were apologetic, who had the edit rights to the show? Because we saw so many clips of Tyra in the edit bay pointing at stuff and trying to look important. Girl, why didn't you point at that and cut it out? Why did it air? Why did it air? Anybody, why did that air? It didn't have to go on air. It's one thing if you said, okay, they know they signed up for a documentary, everything's going to be filmed, blah, blah, blah. But what makes it to air is significant. These are other things to know about shows. For example, people don't realize that with the show The Kardashians, the family actually has edit rights. And Kris Jenner said this in her masterclass. Anything you've ever seen on the Kardashian show, they approved it to be on that show. And the reason it comes across more authentic is because they knew they had edit rights, so they never had to censor themselves in anything that they did because they knew that they could just cut it out in post. So TV is a slippery slope. Somebody has edit rights. Somebody can say, nah, let's cut that out. That's not good. And Tyra, you can't tell me you had 0% saying that. Very disappointed. You ruined that girl's life and sent her back to working at Walgreens when she was gorgeous and could have had a real chance. So I was disappointed that she took no accountability. She didn't even want to talk about Shandy. She barely remembered. How do you barely remember someone getting essayed on your show? She didn't want to talk about Mr. J. You haven't visited Miss J. We didn't hear you speak Nigel's name. We haven't seen you with him either. You just cut and run and cut and run and cycle through people. I'm disappointed. You were supposed to represent the black girls. And here's where I also feel like there was a failing. If you wanted to be a black model that did something so breakthrough, you could have stopped acting like you were the only one. You could have gotten with Beverly Johnson, who already had Ebony Fashion Fair going for centuries, decades. Decades. Google Ebony Fashion Fair. You could have had Iman in the building in a significant way, executive producing. Women, black women who have been in fashion, who were your predecessor. But no, you wanted payback. You wanted to be bigger than the program. So we didn't get the historical boon we could have gotten. We didn't get the support for the black girls that we've forgotten. What we got was colorism. And that leads me to something else, which is how she treated the black girls and how black girls are treated in fashion in the first place. And that's like second-class citizens is how they're treated, if you want me to make it more explicit. I find it interesting that the only person who had anything positive to say about the show was Eva Marcille, who interestingly has the same hazel eyes you do. And she said the show was fierce, except the dark-skinned black girl floundered and could not get work consistently after the show. And you called her, Tyra, and said, I knew I could have helped you, but I did not. I left you to struggle and fail. So the light-skinned girls get help. You let the dark-skinned girl win, but then you left her to drown. How does that work? See, that's performative allyship. That's being a performative women's empowerment person. That's being a performative, I'm here for the black girls person. Because I can let you win, but am I going to actually support you in succeeding? I don't know. Makes you think. It makes me think about the people who have won Drag Race that are black and their success compared to the other queens. But that's another story for another day. Common though, all kinfolk and all skinfolk ain't kinfolk. And not all of them want to see you win. They may place you in places that look like you're winning, but if it's for ill intention, it's not really ever going to come to fruition. That's so disappointing. So disappointing. And again, you had a chance to do something different than what was going on in the industry. Because once again, when it comes to black women in fashion, you know what I've seen? I found it very interesting that predominantly most of the people in LIM's master's program, so again, you're trying to get into the business of fashion or merchandising, black girls. You know why? It's their only way into fashion. Sad part is they got used as interns, and most of the people I graduated with did not end up in fashion. In fact, You know how many people I know that had internships while I was in school? Thankfully for business, I didn't have to do an internship the way that people did for merchandising. So they're working at places on Fifth Avenue in New York, headquarters of major fashion companies. And the amount of my classmates that would come into class at night and be like, I just saw my designs in the store. I'm an intern. And they're selling it for top dollar, and I will never get credit. It's disgusting. Did they get jobs thereafter? No, this is not finance. Finance, you can do an internship and then come back after your senior year and get a job. Fashion will use you for your ideas, your IP. They will put it out, they will make money, and you will never get a job. And I don't say never to discourage black girls, but I say that to be a bit hyperbolic to let you understand that in that industry as a woman of color, you have to kick down doors and create a way. This is why I'm excited to see more Black designers, more Black stylists working with Black artists and artists of color, because that's creating a path for them. I get excited to see Law Roach. I get excited to see Colin Carter working with Cardi B. I get excited for that because you have to find a way in, right? So just know this is what goes on behind the scenes of fashion, both the creative side and the business of fashion. It is nasty. Of course, my neighbor's dog wants to have a say. He agrees. You hear that? He's like, it's true. But it really is cutthroat. And I would have hoped to see a black woman come through and give a different flavor of more positivity. Or at least if you failed back then, come back and take accountability for it. But you couldn't even do that. What you did was try to offer a cycle 25. Are you high? Is it drugs? What is it? That you would think that you could sit on this documentary of revealing all of your dark and dirty past and that we want to see a new season. That's what you thought. You heard that and thought, yeah, for sure, we absolutely should give them another season of Top Model. You know how this is going to go? She's not ready for the 2026 version of this. This is not going to be like when ANTM came out. Because nowadays, those views that she thinks are a marker of success, just like, oh, we had the most views at UPN and we were so popping. Here's the problem. Nowadays, people will tune in just to watch it and trash your ass. And I'll be there, me included. People are going to watch to make content. People are going to watch to tweet about you. People are going to watch to make TikToks. Welcome to the world, baby. TikTok was not around when you did this the first time. You don't want them girls on the top. You don't. They're going to cancel you. So the views will be there, but just know that in 2026, views don't mean success. You have to be viewed heavily to be canceled first. So when you see them views coming, know the cancellation's coming right after that because we're not having it. If you do any of this chicanerous nonsense, cancellation. We're waiting to write it up. We're just waiting on you. So do better or sell ice cream and leave us alone. I hope you guys have enjoyed this deep dive. I would love to hear your comments. Let me know your thoughts on the documentary, on what I shared here, on the history, on the tea. I would love to hear from you. Please share with a friend. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video if it gave you a good, warm, fuzzy feeling, and I will see you guys next time. Love you.